You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and of sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of the imagination. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the narrow mind.
Welcome once again to another edition of The Narrow Mind. My name is Gene Cook, and today is December 6th, 2005. We've got another adventure, I guess I could say, tonight in store for you on The Narrow Mind. I'm going to be interviewing a guest tonight. We have a guest. Her name is Kelly Stonerock, and Kelly Stonerock is the wife of Pastor Jeff Stonerock. And the reason why I'm going to be interviewing Kelly tonight is because she participated in a television program that aired on November 28th. Some of you may have seen it. It aired on ABC. It was called Wife Swap. And in this particular program, Kelly went and lived in the Finley household for a period of 1 week. And if you don't know who the Finleys are, Reggie Finley is also known as the Infidel Guy. He is an atheist, and he's a very vocal atheist. He has a website where he promotes his atheism, and I would even say promotes his distaste and his dislike for God. And he and his wife are atheists, and they raise their children in an atheist home. And so Kelly went and stayed some time in the Finley household, and then Reggie's wife, Amber, went and stayed at the Stonerock household, and she kind of assumed the role as the pastor's wife there for a week. And it was really an interesting program. I mean, I was sitting home and I got a call, and somebody said, "Hey, you're not going to believe what's on TV. Turn on the TV." And so I turned it on, and I missed probably the first 5 minutes of it. But after that, I was able to catch the whole program. I was kind of actually shocked and surprised in many ways, in which hopefully we'll get into tonight. But before I bring on our guest tonight, I just want to make a couple of introductory announcements. First of all, I want to let you know that there is not going to be an Atheist Hour radio program this Sunday night because I'm going on a men's retreat with our church, and so we're coming back on Sunday, and so there will be no Atheist Hour tonight. However, last Sunday's Atheist Hour, which featured our guest atheist, Dr. Zachary Moore, is now available for free download on our homepage. And I would encourage you to download that and give it a listen. We've got a lot of positive comments from atheists on that particular program, and I think that's maybe because Zachary kind of presented himself in a tasteful manner. He didn't become emotional, and he presented some arguments for his belief in evolution. And so we're going to actually, hopefully, Lord willing, continue that dialogue with Zachary Moore in the future sometime. I also want to direct your attention to our Frapper map on our homepage. On the upper right-hand corner at unchainedradio.com, you will find what's called a Frapper map. And if you just click on that, whether you're a Christian, an atheist, or a Buddhist, whatever you don't have to be a Christian to log on to this. But what we'd like you to do is just log on to the map there. You click on it, you put your name, your address. I mean, not your address. We definitely don't want your address. Put your name and your zip code and your email address, and what happens is it basically puts you on the map. And we've got people that have obviously been listening to us in Poland, in Canada. These are just places outside of the U.S., the UK, London, England, Northern Ireland, as well as all across the United States, and even in Mexico City, Taiwan. And so I'm interested to find out where you live, where our listeners live, so I can kind of get an idea of who you are and where you're listening from. So if you just put your name in there, put your zip code and your email address, we won't be contacting you through this map, but we'd like to just find out who you are and where you're listening from. Having said that, let's go ahead and introduce our guest tonight. Once again, for those that just tuned in, I'm going to be introducing to you Kelly Stonerock. Kelly is the pastor of the wife of Pastor Jeff Stonerock, and Kelly participated in the ABC television show Wife Swap. Kelly, I'd like to welcome you to our program. Welcome to The Narrow Mind.
Thank you, Gene. Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. Now, as I mentioned, I was, sitting at home. I wasn't watching TV, and somebody from our church actually called up and said, hey, you need to turn on the television and watch this program because I think this is the guy that you've interviewed before, that you've talked to on your program, The Narrow Mind. So I turned it on, and to my amazement, there was Reggie Finley, a.k.a. the Infidel Guy, and you and your husband and Reggie's wife. And I think I'd only watched this program once before, but for those that have never watched the program, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the program works?
In essence, there's two different programs. This was ABC's Wife Swap. Some people confuse it with Fox Network's Trading Spouses. On Wife Swap, the first week, supposedly we live by their rules, try to live their lifestyle. Then halfway through, we change the rules, and then they have to live by the rules we create.
Okay.
And they usually put opposites with one another.
Okay, so when they contacted you and said, we understand that you're interested in participating in this program, did they mention right away that they were going to pair you up with an atheist family?
No. I mean, we assumed because they put with opposites, our first gut reaction was we'll be put with unbelievers. Okay. However, we're so active in other facets such as sports and hunting, and we have 6 children, so they really could have followed any of those themes, so our minds did go down other pathways. So our gut reaction was we would be put with an unbeliever. But I did not know till I walked into the home. I did not know and confirm that till I walked into the Finley home.
So if I understand this correctly, what happens is they send you an introduction package or an application or something like that. I forgot what they call it. Kind of gives you information about the other family. Is that right?
No, I had nothing about the other family. I knew nothing at all.
I thought I read something on the website. Maybe that's just something that I was looking at the website, and I'm trying to remember what they called it. I thought like it was called an interview package. No, a manual. That's what it is. What's the manual?
Well, yeah. When I saw the show, I made a few questions to them because we thought we could do some good in that format. And they sent me an application, and we filled out the application. Okay. Then there's a long procedure of several weeks before anything happens, but one of the items that they go over is they're interviewing you in order to create a manual. Okay. They actually write the manual. When you watch it on TV, it looks like, hey, I wrote it. We do approve it. I approved mine. My husband and I read it and approved ours. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Reggie and Amber approved theirs. But you're also approving not knowing the type of person or the people that you're meeting. Right. So it's approved based on not knowing who's going to read it.
So you walked into the Finley household, and there mm-hmm. you, I'm sure, were introduced to Reggie Finley. I'm assuming that he had on his favorite baseball cap that says Born Again Atheist. Or it was probably sitting close by his computer. I noticed in the picture that we have on our homepage at Unchained Radio, the picture of you sitting next to him where he's wearing the Jesus Saves hat. I could see his Born Again Atheist hat in the background. I don't know if you saw that. So all of a sudden you walk into his house and you find out that he's not only an unbeliever, but he's an atheist that's very vocal, and he has an internet radio program. He has quite a following. He has a website. In fact, his full-time occupation is up to 80 hours a week investing time in promoting atheism on the internet. Right. So at that point, what were you feeling? What were you thinking?
Oh, well, when I walked in, there's obviously, the very first thing when you walk in the door, there's atheist paraphernalia everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so you walk, front door is his office. So what I saw was that, and it was set up for radio, and I immediately knew I was in the home of an atheist. I had a piece about it still, pretty much wrapped it up on TV when I said I'm up for a challenge. So,
yeah, you were definitely up for a challenge. So, what as the time approached when you were going to be going to the Finley household and Amber was going to be coming to your household, what kind of things were going through your mind? I mean, did you have any fears? Did you have any second thoughts, like maybe I shouldn't be doing this? I mean, what were you feeling as the time was leading up to the time in which you would make the swap? Anytime a pastor steps into an environment like this, you need to do so cautiously.
So we did a great deal of counseling with Dr. Dobson's Focus on the Family. I interviewed a former participant from the show. I talked with a television producer and several ministers across the country. So that was a challenging process alone just to make the decision.
Okay.
I have a journal, and I'm in the airplane with the assistant on the way to Atlanta, and I myself am writing, oh my goodness, I'm really in a plane, I really am doing this show, I thought this was all a dream, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some of that. Now when I walked into his home, what I first saw was a picture of him in the uniform, because he was in the service.
Okay.
And he looks very stern, and it's the biggest picture on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I read the manual, again, they approved their manual. The way I read the manual, what it communicated to me, several times, and people see this on the ABC site, several times it says nothing's good enough. He yells at us. We can't meet his standards.
Mm.
So I did imagine this tall, domineering man and so I had a little moment of nervousness right before I met him, expecting him to be tall, domineering, and scary. And he wasn't that at all.
So when you met him, your first impression was, this is a nice guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
pretty much.
That was kind of my impression, too. I've talked to Reggie Finley several times, a couple of times on his program, The Infidel Guy. He's been on my program a couple times. And although our world views are about as different as they could possibly be,
right.
I don't find him to be, to be intolerable. I mean, actually, I find him to be rather pleasant when we're, just having casual conversation.
Right.
As soon as we start talking about God or his lack of belief in God, then things can become heated. But for the most part, he's a pretty nice guy. That's been my impression also.
Right. My husband did his radio show, and he was very respectful towards my husband.
Good. That's good. So you had did you have any information about Reggie's wife? You knew that this one was now going into your household. What kind of information did you have during the time that you were staying at the Finley household?
Nothing going into it. Once I was there, I didn't have as much opportunity, of course, to get to know her because she was at my home. So my husband had greater opportunity to get to know her. What I knew of her was from the manual, what she approved of being said about herself, and a little bit with Reggie, too. And, of course, the kids were adorable, so that says something about a mom and a dad.
Right. Now, once you were there, how many days had gone by before the rules actually were changed?
Technically, I arrived on a Saturday. The rules were changed on a Tuesday night.
Okay. And one of the rules that you changed, as I was watching the show, as I recall from memory, is you wanted Reggie to wear a hat that said Jesus Saves.
That was more in jest. That was because he wore that born-again atheist hat to, I went to an atheist meeting with him, and he wore that hat.
Was that like an atheist meetup or something? Is that what they call the meetup?
Right. Yep, they had me go along with, I went along with him to an atheist meetup.
Okay. And did he wear that hat to the atheist meetup?
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, I was surprised he didn't get one and ask me to wear it because I was prepared for my response if he did.
Right. He's really a sport, isn't he? I mean, he's really going along with this. For him to wear that hat to an atheist meetup, that was pretty...
Well, he didn't wear the Jesus Saves hat.
Oh, that's what I thought you were talking about.
No. He wore the born-again atheist hat. So the Jesus Saves hat was just more of a fun jest, and he took it in jest just like it was meant.
Okay, good.
I wasn't asking him to wear it out in public and, run around and proclaiming that Jesus is Lord, knowing he didn't believe that.
Right. Okay, well, let me give out our phone number. We are going to be taking some calls tonight. If you'd like to ask Kelly Stonerock a question about her experience on the ABC Wife Swap television program, our phone number is 1-800-466-1873. That's toll-free, 1-800-466-1873, or you can call us on our local line at 619-793-5180. Let's go ahead and take our first call. We have Brian calling from Pennsylvania. Brian, welcome to The Narrow Mind.
Thank you very much. You invited me to call several weeks ago, and I want to thank you for the invitation, and thank you for taking my call today. Am I at the wrong time to be calling? I know you have your guest here. Are you just wanting to take calls for people to talk to her?
Well, we really want to kind of focus on the program that we're discussing tonight, the ABC show Wife Swap.
Okay.
So if you want to talk about something other than that, it'd probably be best to call me back next week, because next week we don't have anything planned. We'll probably do an open phones program.
Okay, that'll probably what I should do then.
Okay. Well, thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Once again, our phone number is 1-800-466-1873. Tonight we're going to be just talking about the television show that took place on ABC, Wife Swap. I have our guest with us tonight, Kelly Stonerock, who is the wife of Pastor Jeff Stonerock. Kelly, what is the name of your church?
Victory World Outreach Center in Goodrich, Michigan.
Okay, Victory World Outreach Center.
If they want to know more about it, there is a website, just victoryworldoutreach.org.
Okay. And how long has your husband been a pastor?
He's been a pastor of this church for 4 years. He started preaching when he was 17 years old, and has been a youth pastor a couple times, a couple different places. Had been offered a lot of open doors. However, he waited till the right one was open that we're supposed to walk through, and that's this at this church 4 years ago. Good.
You know, one of the things that surprised me, it pleasantly surprised me, was that many times on these network-produced television shows, the Christians are often portrayed, as bumbling fools, as people that don't have any common sense. And I thought when I first saw it, I said, okay, here we go. Let's see how bad they can make the Christians look. But as I mentioned, I was pleasantly surprised that you guys came out looking really good. In fact, your husband, I think, was an excellent model of a Christian man who is raising children, constantly talking about God, constantly, talking to the kids about the Word of God, praying with them, discussing faith with them, and so much so that, if I remember correctly, when the rules changed in your household back at home with your husband, one of the rules that Amber made was that she didn't want your husband mentioning God or talking about God, or I think even praying about God. Is that right? Or praying to God.
Yep.
And the penalty for doing that was it $1 or $10 or something like that?
It depended on the offense.
Okay.
But they got up to $60-something.
That was what was in the box?
Right.
So every time he mentioned God or, said something that had to do with God, he would have to throw some money into this shoebox that they were saving up for a party for the kids, which I thought was pretty cool. That was the thing that Amber actually decided to spend the money on, if it was her decision at all. I thought was pretty nice. Mm-hmm. So he makes a comment at some point in the show that he said serving God, I think what he said, serving God pays, or...
Right, exactly. Yep. He said, I always teach my kids that serving God pays, and in this case, it paid them well.
Yeah. And now another thing that impressed me is that when Amber, who is Reggie's wife, she brought out a T-shirt that had the name God in it, had the word God in it, and it had a red circle with a line going through it, kind of like an anti-God T-shirt.
Exactly, yeah.
She brought that out and presented it to him, and she wanted him to wear it.
Right.
And at that point, I thought, oh, no, please don't put it on.
Exactly.
And he didn't. I was like, yes, thank you, Lord.
We had so many emails about that.
That was great. Now, I'm assuming that when you go into a program like this, it's clear on both sides that you're not going to be asked to do anything that's going to violate your conscience. Was that true, or did that
when I saw the show the first time, I thought some of these people were told they had to obey the rules. I went in knowing I'm not going to obey any rule or provide any rules that would violate our conscience. So so my husband, I know he went in prepared the same way. We simply would not have.
Right, because I'm assuming that, you mentioned that I read in the some of the information on your website that they actually screen the families for drugs and things like that. But I'm assuming if they did, if you got hooked up with some family that used drugs or something, obviously they're not going to force you to do something that violates your conscience. So when he was presented with the T-shirt, obviously, that as a Christian, not only a Christian but a pastor, that was something that violated his conscience. He said, for me to wear this would be to be wearing a lie, or to be, portraying a lie, which he could not do.
Right.
So I was very happy about that.
Me too.
Let's go to the phones. We do have a caller. Let's go to Dustin calling from Greensboro, North Carolina. Dustin, welcome to the Narrow Mind.
Good evening, brother. How you doing?
Very good. Now, let me just tell our guest, Kelly, Dustin is a pastor in Greensboro, North Carolina, and a personal friend of mine.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on this whole thing, Dustin?
Well, my wife and I, we had actually gone on Reggie Finley's site, infidelguy.com, and had found out that this was going to take place, I think about a week and a half before the show actually came on. And we sat and watched it, and I tell you, I just wanted to call in. I don't really have any questions, but I wanted to call in, and I wanted to say that I thought, Ms. Stonerock, you just did a wonderful job of demonstrating what it means to be a Christian woman, and you really did a good job, I feel, of representing 1 Peter 3:15, which says, "But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who gives you account for the hope that's in you, yet with gentleness and reverence." And I felt like you did that, especially, I guess it was the home studio clip where you were in Reggie Finley's home studio.
Mm-hmm.
You were behind the computer screen, and you had like your notes with you, and you and him were kind of going back and forth.
Right.
And I remember him saying, "Why do I have to listen to an antiquated book?"
Right.
And you had the Bible open there, and you pointed at that book, and I can't remember everything you said, but essentially you said, "Look, this is where absolute truth is found, because God has spoken essentially through His Word." Obviously, that's kind of the gist of what you were getting at, but I just want to thank you for doing that. That was really, really a breath of fresh air to see somebody stand up, and it's just great to see, too, your husband stand up and be a gentleman in the midst of, I know this had to be hard for you guys. I couldn't imagine, but I just want to thank you for doing that. Yeah,
Dustin, thanks for sharing that. I was so pleasantly surprised by, we received hundreds of emails in support, and a great number were pastors and pastors' wives, and we've been so blessed, and, give God the glory for, and it's not just people giving support like you are, but there's been wonderful testimonies of people, needing salvation writing to us, and people who incredible testimonies. It'd be another 2-hour show explaining them all.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's something else that was really encouraging too. Was I call in on the show usually on a weekly basis, and good friends with Gene, and we have a heart for these people, and we want to see them. We want to see the people who are willing to investigate the truth claims of Jesus Christ, and we want to use this as a means the Holy Spirit can use to draw people to faith in Christ. And it was just really good to see the effect that you had on Reggie's household, and at least by what the show portrayed at the end, seeing Reggie playing with Dorian and them outside and going outside. It was just great to see that, and it was great too to see Amber Finley kind of developing a pretty good little friendship with. Is that your niece? That's
my niece Taylor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But she seemed to develop a pretty good friendship with her, and they seemed to get off real good. So it was nice to see that.
Right.
And it just.
Well, we did receive emails from several atheists too, and so we've been going through every one of those emails. My husband's joining your ranks, so they're of sharing with the atheist community, the whole Christian faith.
That's great.
Well,
Praise the Lord.
There certainly are a lot of them out there. To our surprise, we started this Atheist Hour program probably about 2 or 3 months ago. And every Sunday night we have usually a different guest atheist on. And we've been amazed, how many people are listening and how many atheists are writing us, and even how many atheists are coming onto our website at Unchained Radio and posting comments. And it's really great because both Dustin and I, as Dustin mentioned, have a heart for atheists. Right. And, we believe that they're the most vocal. They have people listening to them. A lot of these people have followings. And so when a guy like Reggie Finley comes on the program, you can be sure that there are going to be not just one or two, but several atheists listening. And so it's a great opportunity to proclaim the truth of God in, an uncompromising way. And we just believe that we believe so firmly that the Bible is the Word of God and that Jesus Christ is Lord, that we're not afraid of anybody. We don't care if they've got a PhD. I mean, I just have a high school diploma, and I had an atheist on last week that had a PhD. Who cares? The wisdom of the world is foolishness compared to the wisdom that's hidden in Christ.
Absolutely.
So
that's what I lived over in the house, Romans.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Dustin, good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to hear from you. Thank you, Ms. Stonerock. God bless you.
Thank you, Dustin.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, and once again, let me give out our phone number, 1-800-466-1873. That is toll free, 1-800-466-1873. Before we take our next call, let me just comment on something or ask you about something that Dustin just mentioned. Now, when you came into the household, the impression that I got from the program was that basically Reggie is a workaholic. I mean, not necessarily in a bad sense, but I mean, he's just consumed with working and making a living and, providing for his family. It seemed like that was he wasn't a workaholic because he wanted to, because he's a materialist or he wants to have a bunch of things. But it seemed to me that he was working so many hours because he places a high priority on caring for his family. So, but my perception was that because he worked so many hours, this took away from his interaction with the children. So can you comment on that?
Well, on that week in particular, it not only took from his children, it probably really did take from his work just because the production process is so timely. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he went into that aware of how much time he would lose, and that maybe caused more pressure and stress as well. But no, I felt like he his goal was to provide for his family, and that drove his work hours. And, of course, the 70, 80-hour work week, that's based on the manual that they approved. I've heard some backtracking of those hours, but that is what was written in the manual, and I understood if you approved it, then that must be true.
Yeah. In fact, if you look at the ABC Wife Swap website, you'll find Amber Finley is actually saying, and I'm not sure if this is just an excerpt from the manual, but she mentions there that he does work 80 hours a week. So one of the rules that you made when it was time for you to change the rules was you wanted him to spend some one-on-one time with Dorian. Is that right?
Right. Yep. Reduce his hours just to spend more time with his family. Yes.
So how many hours did you put him to 8 hours a day or something like that?
On mine, I put it 9 to 5:30.
Okay. And then he went down and played laser tag with his oldest son, Dorian.
Correct.
And he looked like he was having a great time.
Right, yeah.
I mean, he looked like
I know they had a great time. They came back both happy.
Right, and you could see that just shining through, And then I noticed another thing that you implemented there was you had, I don't know if he purchased it or the network purchased it, but somebody purchased an outside what's it called, a play set or
swing set, yeah.
Swing set, Jungle Gym.
Yeah, that was at my request.
Okay, and he set it up, and the kids looked like they were having a great time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Now, they weren't accustomed to going out. The impression that I got from the program was that they weren't accustomed to going outside and playing very much. They kind of were like an inside type of family environment. Mm-hmm. And you kind of introduced them to going outside and playing on the swings and doing those types of things.
Right.
And they not only did the kids seem to benefit from it, but I think if I understood the program correctly, that both Reggie and his wife, Amber, had mentioned that they thought it was a good improvement to their family.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they did.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see him just having fun, playing catch with his oldest boy, Dorian, and playing laser tag. And it just looked like he was having a blast. And I was thinking, if I could just spend time with my family, if all I had to do, if the Lord said to me, Gene, what do you want to do? Name it. Do you want to be a CEO of a company? You want to be the pastor of a megachurch? What do you want to do? Mm-hmm. I would say, I just want to spend time with my family.
Right. My husband say the same thing.
If I could just spend time with my kids and my wife every day, I would be the happiest man in the world. Obviously, my church comes second to that, which I get to do because of my position as a pastor. But, I have a similar website to Reggie's, obviously on the opposite side of the belief system. I'm promoting Christian theism. I'm promoting Jesus Christ. And but I probably spend maybe 5 hours on my website. But then again, I'm not doing it full time. I mean, it's not a source of income for me. My first full-time position is at the church. So it's hard for me to comprehend, though, spending 80 hours a week in front of the computer. But I guess if that's what you have to do to make ends meet, then go ahead.
I never did figure out or have the time to understand how we could spend 80 hours on it either.
Well,
I know people get on the internet and you can get drawn down all different pathways.
Well, you can become you can become consumed, like in the forums where people are discussing on these bulletin boards different subjects, and if you're keeping on top of that and you're participating in these conversations, it can become very time consuming. That's one of the reasons why I don't participate in the forum, even on our own website. You will rarely find a post from me, just because, number one, I don't type. I have to type with two fingers. But secondly, in addition to that, I just don't have the time to engage in these types of conversations in a written form. I'll be more than happy to talk to people on the phone or on the air, but other than that, I just don't have the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and go to our next caller. Let's go to Arthur calling from Mountain View, California. Arthur, welcome to The Narrow Mind.
Hey, Pastor Cook, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Arthur?
I'm doing pretty good. And Kelly, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Arthur. I'm here.
Hi, Kelly. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, I just had like a question for you, and then I had like a comment. I just wanted to know how exactly, what was it like, being, hanging around Reggie, or especially since, he's an atheist, you're a Christian, and obviously there's an ideological conflict, but as a person, what was he like? From what I've debated an atheist on his show, the Infidel Guy, and he was very fair to me and everything, and at some points, it was a 2-on-1, but it wasn't like it was planned or anything. It's just the fact that they were both atheists. But for the most part, he was very fair. He seemed like a very nice guy who likes to have fun, jokes around. But what was he like? And then I have a comment I'd like to make before I get off the line.
Okay. Well, in general, even he made a comment on our Thursday night that we didn't have a whole lot of conflict all week. In general, the points of conflict we had, you saw on air. There probably were just the 2 or 3 points of conflict that we even had. So he himself commented that we didn't have very much conflict, and even wondered if our episode would air because there wasn't enough conflict. But in general, we really, the production process does keep you from being together and talking as much as I thought we would have opportunity to. In general, we got along okay, and only in these isolated situations did we have, he would challenge me a lot. I did feel like there were times that I was living in the New Testament where people were being challenged and, questioned all the time and put in ethical situations, and what about this and what about that. So there were times that he did that, but in general I had quite a peace throughout the whole process, so it did not affect me much. I did notice immediately in one of our first conversations that he's definitely more emotionally responsive than I'm used to. From our first conversation, we had one conversation about hunting, and he reacted strongly in our first conversation, and he seemed just stressed immediately to me. But I'm so used to low stress that any kind of stress sticks out to me.
Okay. Now, is he against hunting?
No, he wasn't, as long as you were... once he discovered that we utilize the meat and so on, that we actually do eat the meat, and we utilize every part practically of a deer. But no, he wasn't once he discovered that. But his first reaction was strong to when I said I hunted. But
he's not a vegetarian, right?
No, he's not, and he's not a vegetarian or anything like that. It was just my first realization that he's more emotionally responsive than I'm used to.
Yeah, he's you could call him a passionate guy. And you had a comment also, Arthur?
Yes, just an observational type comment. Because I noticed you said on the show, and I didn't see the Wife Swap show, by the way. I just heard about it from you, Pastor, and your website. And I've been trying to get like a DVR tape or something, disc or something from the show, because I really would like to see it. But the comment was, you had made the comment, Pastor, that, Reggie's struggling and trying to feed his family. And it just came to me, and this, I don't know how you would feel about it, but as a Christian, if he's struggling to try to, take care of his family and work, even though he's working 80 hours a week and all that, I would have a problem, saying, look, let's just get up a collection of some Christians who want to help him out. Just say, look, here's a little something to help you out, take care of your family. Despite his atheism, we don't like his ideology, but I don't have a problem helping him feed his family. And that was basically my comment.
Well, go ahead, Kelly.
Well, one of my rules that didn't make the show was regarding how to use finances, because 1/3 of his income, of which he makes the same income my husband does, it, by the way, similar. 1/3 of their income was going towards that daycare, and that was one of the reasons I pulled the children out of daycare. And one of my rules that did not make the air was I was going to sit down and help with the whole financial plan with him of how to use money more wisely so that there wouldn't be a struggle there, because we're doing it with 6 children on a similar income as he's doing with 3 children.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And he has no house payment at this point that I know of.
Right. Arthur, thanks for the question and the comment. Good talking to you. That was one thing that didn't make sense to me also, that here you have a stay-at-home mom, Amber, and yet they were taking the kids to daycare every day. Now,
right.
How many hours were the kids spending in daycare?
I understand it's about 45 hours, because 5 days a week,
45 hours a week, and that's not cheap. So
No, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it adds up pretty quick. Now, I'm assuming that Dorian was going off to school, so it was just the 2
Correct.
younger ones?
Yes.
Okay, and let me just comment on what Arthur said. There's a part of me that, because I was listening to Reggie the other night on one of his programs. He was talking about how his car had broke down and he didn't have transportation at the moment. And there's a part of me that I suppose feels like Arthur does. There's a part of me that wants to help him and reach out to him, financially. Mm-hmm. But there's another part of me that says, well, wait a minute. He's investing all of his work time in anti-God propaganda. I mean, he's got this website, and I know he gets offended when you say it's anti-God. He says it's not anti-God. No, I'm here to tell you it is anti-God. It's anti-Jesus Christ, because not only did we see Amber present Pastor Stonerock with an anti-God T-shirt, but we also, if you just take a look at his website, it's always, they're mocking Christianity, they're mocking the Bible, they're mocking the biblical accounts of Moses and the Exodus. Every time I go over there or read something off the website, they're attacking Christianity. So there's another part of me that says, hey, wait a minute, maybe this is what God is going to use to break this guy. If he's comfortable and making ends meet while he's promoting atheism, who knows if he'll ever turn to the Lord. But yet if he finds himself in a predicament where he realizes that he can't make it and he has to shut the website down, I think personally that would be something better. That would be, obviously better for us as a society, but also better for him as an atheist, because he's just heaping judgment upon himself as he continues to promote his atheism through his website. Now, that's my own personal opinion. Mm-hmm. If another Christian feels differently and they want to send him some money, by all means, send him some money. In fact, you can go on his website and make a donation right there with a MasterCard or a Visa, and I'm sure he would appreciate that very much. But it's kind of like looking at a homeless guy who has the ability to work, and he's not working. Now, obviously, I'm not. If you just listen to my analogy before you jump to conclusions, so you have somebody that can work that doesn't work. In a like manner, Reggie could go out and get a full-time job and support his family. If he's having trouble making ends meet promoting atheism, maybe that's what he needs to do. That's just my opinion. At the end of the day, he's the one that ultimately is responsible for feeding his family and making sure that his family is cared for. So, and I know that he has a desire to do that. I know he's not lazy.
Right.
He's definitely not lazy. Anybody that will spend 80 hours a week promoting your online business, that tells you right there that they're not lazy. Mm-hmm. So he must be very disciplined in that regard. Let's talk about, you mentioned a little bit earlier, Kelly, you said that there wasn't a whole lot of conflict, but there was some conflict. How many conflicts actually took place? Because I can think of the one where you talked to him about.
Well, probably some that he calls conflicts weren't to me.
Okay, maybe you can give us a few examples of those, or an example of those.
Like what did make the air where he called me vicious? That came out of nowhere to me. I didn't even know we were in anything that would draw him to that conclusion in that conversation. So I thought the conversation at the end we were having about his work, what led into the conclusion of that show, I didn't expect that to become a conflict. And he would constantly ask me about homosexuality, for example. And one time I did finally just get fed up and, just told him, listen, my Bible tells me to avoid foolish contentions, and that's what this is, and I walked away. Mm-hmm. That's probably about the only time that I actually got a little bit worked up, because he did make some comments that were degrading towards me, although it was the first time I heard him say anything degrading to my face, and then it was followed up with this conversation that made me just walk away.
Now, the thing that shocked me the most is the scene where he has an emotional breakdown. For those that didn't see the program, there's some type of conflict that takes place, and I'm assuming that, if I remember back, he was upset about you limiting his hours. Maybe you can kind of give us the context of what happened there.
Yeah, it's assuming of me to conclude why he responded the way he did. I can only describe the events leading up to that.
Okay.
And that was basically the night before there was conversation that it was the last day before we all flew to Michigan and did the sit down. And it was understood it was supposed to be a fun day, I thought. The night before all the conversation was tomorrow's just a relaxed day, just a fun day. So, they do show on air, they show it kind of backwards, because they show me going in and doing this close sign afterwards, as if I did this twice. I went in once and then came in a second time, and, asking him, okay, today's supposed to be a fun day. I have a picnic planned. It's a fun day for you and the kids and I just to go to the picnic and park and have fun. And I did that one time. The way it reads on the show, I came back a second time that I was all the more driven to have this fun day. That didn't really happen. I actually did that first, then what everybody's talking about, the event where he got upset, that occurred afterwards.
So when you came to him and said, hey, it's time to shut down, we're supposed to have a picnic, a fun day.
He acted okay then.
Okay, so what triggered the response where he comes out, and I think he kicks like a teddy bear across the room, and then he...
Right. Well, there was some downtime where he was in the office for a bit, probably with the crew or something, and all I know is next thing I know, he comes out of the office and he says to me, I will do this today, but, in a real world, I really couldn't do one day a week with my take a whole day off every week, one day a week with my family. And, I could have said nothing at that point, and, then, of course, the whole conflict wouldn't have occurred after that. But to me, it didn't feel appropriate just to go, oh, okay, thanks for doing this one day. So I simply said, I will never understand, because I know he loves his kids. And I know that his work is trying to provide for his family. So I said, you want them to be your priority. I know you love them. I'll never understand why you can't spend one day a week with your family. And that's when he got really upset and made the accusations you saw on air. And, they don't show me trying to say, listen, that's not what I mean to communicate. And I'm trying to reach out to him because he's obviously upset. And in being understanding, I was saying to him, I understand, I commend you for having a work ethic that you need to provide for your family. They don't show any of that.
So for those that didn't see the program, at this point, Reggie comes out of his office and he kicks like a teddy bear or something across the room, and then he breaks down and cries, which totally caught me off guard. And I have to tell you, at first, I thought that he was playing around or something. I didn't think he was serious. I thought, what is he doing? Is he putting on some type of act here? And then it became evident that he wasn't acting.
Yeah, this was real.
He was actually crying.
Right.
I think at one point he put his head down on the kitchen counter and was sobbing.
Right.
And he said something to the effect, you think, if I remember correctly, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, you think I'm a bad father, or you're making me look like a bad father, you're making me look like a bad husband. I'm trying to remember exactly what he said.
He said, you make me feel unsuccessful.
Okay, you make me feel unsuccessul. So at that point, you were actually trying to comfort him. You said, no, that's not what you must have took it wrong or something like that.
On camera, all they have is me saying while he's having that reaction, me saying that is not how I feel. What you didn't see was after that, some more of him being upset happened. And I was trying to comfort and say, that is not what I mean. I don't mean to communicate that. And then, of course, like I said, I commended him on having that kind of work ethic.
Right. Now
that was real. He did get upset, but people don't understand another part of the show is, they did interrupt his work week terribly. He did not get the work in that he may have expected, and it's exhausting. You're working 14 hours a day. It's stressful. But, we're still responsible, even under stress, for our reactions, and we got to take responsibility for what we say, what we do. I do too.
That's right. Now, as a Christian watching that segment of the show, immediately I'm thinking, wow, this is really incredible. I mean, here you have a Christian woman in an atheist home, and for whatever reasons, we don't know, we can't look inside Reggie's heart. We don't know what was going on in his heart.
Right.
For whatever reasons, he's having a breakdown.
Yeah.
Could this be, the Lord just working on him and I mean, that was what I was thinking when I saw it. I thought, this is like, the Lord is really breaking him down. I'm sure that he came on this program thinking that this was going to somehow benefit his line of work, what he does with the website and all that, give him some exposure, which obviously it did give him a lot of exposure. And it wasn't panning out for him, or at least it didn't seem to be looking good for him. At least that was my own perception. Now, if I remember correctly, he makes a comment, something about he's losing subscribers, or something's going wrong with the website. This program is having an adverse effect on his business, and so he seems to be upset about that. Now, what's interesting is that after the program aired, I went over to his website because I was interested to find out what his supporters would say about this and what types of comments atheists might be making. And it seemed to be there was two types of comments. There were either those that were his faithful supporters that said, hey, I'm glad Reggie cried because he just showed that he's human. He showed that, he's not this, this hardened, type of man, but he's sensitive, And then you had other atheists that were very upset about the way that he portrayed atheism, which I thought, that's got to be really hard for him, because he takes so seriously what he does, and when he gets this negative feedback, even from people in his own camp, I'm sure he's going to be taking that very hard too. Now, he also had a 2.5-hour program where he discussed what happened during the course of the filming and how it was edited. Did you get a chance to listen to that,
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but was it pretty accurate? I'm just curious.
There's obviously areas. I mean, we could make the same claims that they did, and it'd be different terms. There were things that weren't included that we thought would be included. We could make a lot of the same claims they did. We definitely disagree, he and I, on that last scene of what may or may not, what transpired before or after he had that breakdown.
Okay.
I heard that out of his tape. I did take notes somewhere. I don't have those in front of me of what we did, what I felt like we did agree with him on and what we didn't. It seemed like most of it was a criticism of the production company. A lot of it was, them saying, well, we were made to write that manual that way. We didn't want to. We told them we didn't want to include that. But see, we had to approve ours, and we took everything out that we didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. The only comment that I made that we didn't remove was I said, Jeff, this sounds like we pray. That's all we do is pray around here.
Mm-hmm.
That we never talk about anything else. And sure enough, that was picked up on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And but we thought, what's the worst thing to be accused of? We pray too much.
Right.
That didn't bother us. So
exactly. Now, there was one of the things that Amber did was she brought in a tutor that was an atheist, and he began to tutor the children from an atheistic perspective or from an evolutionary perspective. Have there been any lingering effects of that taking place? I mean, have the kids because it seemed like your niece, I forgot what her name was. By the way, this is my son's question. He wants me to make sure that you know that Noah, my 12-year-old son, this was his question. But so he wanted me to point that out. Was there any, because she seemed to be kind of vulnerable, the most vulnerable. The boys said, no, well, if it's a big fish, somebody can help.
Right.
And I was like, right on. That was a good response. But what kind of after effects have you noticed, if any?
Well, none in my children at all. Taylor, I've only had her, my niece, at that time, living in this house on her own with her brother. I'd only had her for 9 months, so I haven't had the same opportunity as I have with my own children, raising them up to teach the different sides. Some think all we do is teach our kids, what the Bible teaches, but that's not true. I teach them what the world teaches as well.
Good.
They just think it's as ridiculous as I do.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been no lingering effects from that at all, and we weren't really concerned about it at all. That wasn't something that we were concerned about, an atheist tutor coming into our home. We've raised them in the ways of the Lord, and we're not concerned.
Good.
But
good.
did you hear what happened when that atheist tutor came in?
Yeah, I heard something. He was having some problems speaking or something like that.
He could not speak. For 4 hours they tried to tape him. My husband prayed over that. Pardon me? Yeah, what you see on TV is the second tutor that came in the next day.
Okay.
The first tutor was sent home because he said he just couldn't speak. Every time he would go to speak, his mind just went blank, he told my husband. He says that's never happened to him in his 35 years of teaching or something, and the next day he could talk just fine in front of the camera crews. But
interesting. Now, at the end of the program, when all of you fly to Michigan, I'm assuming you and Reggie flew to Michigan.
Right.
All four of you, both husbands and wives, sit down, and you kind of have this talk back and forth. What is that portion of the show? Is there a name for that, or that segment?
The sit down, where all four of us sit down. That's all I call it. The sit down.
The sit down. All right.
I'm losing you a little because of some music or something.
Yeah, I can hear something. Noah, is that your computer over there? No? Yeah, I was kind of hearing some interference there. Strange. Okay. Well, it's gone now. Now I lost my train of thought.
We're at the sit down. You were bringing us to the sit down.
Bringing you to the sit down. Now, when you sit down, were you kind of surprised at the things that Reggie said at that sit down?
Well, what he said at that was the very end, and they had actually left the room at that point. We had a very, good conversation. Mm-hmm. What they had just asked me was, what is it like to live with Reggie? Mm-hmm. And they actually went around the whole table and had us answer the question of what it was like. Amber, what was it like living with Jeff? Jeff, what was it like living with Amber? They got to me and said, Kelly, what was it like living with Reggie? And that's when I said, I thought it was hard. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows that was the question asked. And I was very resistant to share that, to be honest, because they wanted to know what it was like to live with him. I did not want to say anything critical about him in front of his wife.
Now, at that point, he seems like he becomes a little bit irritated. Sounds like we got some interference. Okay,
we're fine now.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So he became irritated at that point, is that right?
Well, I said it was difficult to live with him, that, he seemed stressed and, concerned about different things. By comparison to me, I'm not stressed, and I wasn't concerned. I had the crew members asking me, are you okay? Mm-hmm. A few times thinking I might have been or concerned or stressed or something bothered me or upset me, but nothing ever did. Seldom, only one time I can think of. And So by comparison, he definitely seemed more stressed and concerned and worried than I was, for sure.
Okay.
And that's what I told him it was like living with him. And yes, that made him upset.
Now, I remember him turning to his wife and said, "She actually made me cry." And then, I'm thinking that's, of course, I'm just going by memory. I saw the show one time. But, and then he asked her a question. He says, "How often do I cry?" And she turned to him and said, "About once a week." So I'm thinking...
yeah, that wasn't... I don't remember that. I mean, I've watched the show. He just looked over and said...
Okay, you know what? You're right. That was on the radio program. That's where I'm getting that from. I'm sorry. I'm glad you corrected me on that. On the radio program, leading up to the portion that you listened to, I'm not sure if you heard that part or not, but he turned to her and said, "How many times a week or how often do I cry?" And she said, "Once." So overall, is there anything that you would have done differently if you had to do it all over again?
That I would have done differently? Gosh, Gene, that's a new question. But
you'll have to post that one on the website after you think of a good answer.
At this point, I don't think there is anything I'd do differently. I can't think of anything.
Okay.
We went into this so prayerful, and I just let cameras roll, trying to be very careful in what I shared and said. So
right now, as a pastor,
I would have done a different church. I would have made sure when I took him to church, because they don't show that I went to his atheist meeting, so he went to church with me.
Okay, yeah,
I would have taken him to a different church.
Okay, so where he could hear more of the
word
message. There you go.
Yeah, where I took him wasn't word filled.
Okay, now I have to ask this question because I'm a pastor, and I've been a pastor now for over 9 years, and I know that oftentimes the sheep can get their feathers ruffled over the smallest things. Did anybody in the church become upset about your participation in this program?
No one became upset, but they know my husband pretty well. He's pretty wise and discerning and very slow to make any decisions. So our church pretty much knew we don't step out into anything without giving it a great deal of thought. So the truth is, when he announced it, our church broke out into applause.
That's great.
There were, a couple people that were a little concerned, but other than that, very supportive, and we've received great support from churches across the nation.
Okay, and you've also been, I noticed if you take a look at your guest book on your website, and by the way, let me give out the website. Why don't you give it out? Why don't you give out your website?
Well, if anybody has any questions, comments, they can get a hold of us at www.biblegal.org. And we have live chats on Thursdays now at 9 o'clock. It was 7:30, but we've moved it to 9 because those of you on the West Coast there said that's way too early. So it's Thursdays at 9 for a live chat as well.
Okay. And I'm assuming that you picked up the name Bible Gal because you hijacked the Infidel Guy website,
right?
Or the
right.
web show.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to listen to that program either. How did that go, sitting behind the microphone?
Oh, I was surprisingly comfortable.
Good.
I surprised myself. So, no, it was fine. I mostly went in. I was a little nervous about it in the beginning, but once I was on, it was okay.
Okay. And what I was saying about your website there's a guest book where you can actually make entries and make comments, post comments. And I'm reading through some of the comments there. The majority of the comments seem to be in support. They're from Christians. But there are some comments on there that are very negative, and I think they mischaracterize your participation in this whole thing. But as a Christian woman, how does that make you feel?
Their eyes of their understanding just need to be enlightened. That's how it makes me feel. And so when I read those, it doesn't affect me. I'm not upset. It doesn't bother me. In fact, you'll notice we leave most of them up there. So the viewers can see, here's how the atheists, here's the Christians. And some of them are not a very good reflection on the atheists. So we've received some emails from the atheists themselves that have been that have actually been supportive of us. So
that's great. Now, have you received any threats from atheists or anything like that?
No. I mean, there was one on there that was just disgusting. So we deleted that one, but no, nothing like a threat or anything of that nature.
Because over on Reggie's website, he was mentioning that somebody was threatening him, or some atheist. I think it was an atheist, actually, that I may have read the same post that he was referencing, that they wanted to beat him up if they ever saw him on the street, because they felt as an atheist that he had portrayed the atheist in a negative manner, which I thought was kind of strange. Because, I mean, I didn't see anything negative about the way that Reggie portrayed himself as an atheist. I didn't see anything necessarily to be embarrassed about. I mean, I've been known to even cry sometimes when I'm preaching. I happen to be an emotional guy myself. Obviously, I would be crying for different reasons than Reggie was, but,
Right.
We all have our moments. And so I was kind of surprised that there were those that were criticizing him and saying that, and actually canceling their subscriptions. I saw another place where he said that this has resulted even more people canceling their subscriptions. So I don't know to what degree that's true, or to what degree that has affected his website or not, or to what degree it's happened. But, well, anything you want to, we're out of time. We're up against the top of the hour here. So anything that you want to say by way of closing?
Well, we just stepped out to do this because we were obeying the Word of God that says, go into the world and preach the gospel. And we simply couldn't think of more into the world than a show called Wife Swap, prime time, before Monday Night Football. And so, I mean, I guess for Christian listeners, I'd encourage them to just be bold and take more, just to hear from God and take more risks to proclaim the gospel. I lived out Ephesians 15 when I went through this, that in the Amplified says to live purposely and worthily and accurately, not as the unwise and witless, but as wise, sensible, intelligent people, making the very most of the time, buying up each opportunity because the days are evil.
Amen.
If we'd all do that, we'd make a bigger difference in this world.
We would. Well, Kelly, I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this, and keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you, Gene.
Okay, God bless you.
All righty, bye-bye.
All right, you've been listening to The Narrow Mind. My name is Gene Cook. Thank you for listening.